But now to the devastated communities hit hard by summer fires yet again in Victoria. And the anger in these communities is palpable. We've seen individuals and towns devastated by fire. But in the case of Victoria, don't forget, we're just 17 years on from the devastation of Black Saturday. And yet it seems the Victorian Labor, despite a royal commission, has failed to act on the recommendations that would help mitigate a similar disaster.
Shame on you, Premier. How are you today? I'm really bad, as everybody else is. Shame on you, government. For what you've done to cause this situation and what you're doing to not help it now.
Hello, how are you?
Shame on you!
Victorian farmer Maxwell Hobson died next to his ute while trying to protect his property in Euroa, which is north-east of Melbourne. 260 other families have lost their homes. Some 20,000 head of livestock have also been killed. Now, over the state's history, Victoria has been hit harder than any other state or territory in the country. And while you might think that would focus the mind of government to do whatever it takes to limit deaths and property losses in the future, it would seem that the opposite has been true. Labor may well have increased the fire levy on Victorians, but it's not increased support for the Country Fire Authority, its volunteers, its trucks, or overall bushfire preparedness. And as more and more questions come for Jacinta Allan, it would appear she's digging in. Here are her comments yesterday.
There has only ever been an increase in funding to the CFA. Let's not let this little conspiracy theory run away. I want to be absolutely clear that any claim to the contrary is false. In terms of your desire for publicly available information, the CFA board put out a statement a week ago, making it absolutely clear that there has only ever been an increase in funding.
Well, hardly a conspiracy theory. Today, Victoria's independent budget watchdog publicly challenged the Premier's assertion that there has been an increase to the budget. It's found there's been an overall budget decrease to the CFA since the 2020-21 financial year. Here to discuss this and more, Victorian opposition leader Jess Wilson. Well, you know, talk about conspiracy theories, as I said, this is the Budget Office, so this is an independent entity. It's looked at the books of the CFA and it says since the 2020-2021 budget year, Jess, over that time there's been a $50 million reduction in funding. So who's telling the truth?
Well, this is the independent parliamentary budget watchdog calling out the Premier and the government for not being honest with Victorians. It's there in black and white in the CFA annual report. And what we've seen over the past week, Peter, is the Premier repeatedly misleading Victorians. First, we had the Premier come out and say that the latest CFA annual report could not be released because it had been held up for the Auditor General processes and it wasn't available at the end of last year. Well, the Auditor General, the independent umpire, called the Premier out on that, issuing a statement to correct the record to say that it finalised the report on the 11th of November. And then the Minister had to confirm that she received it in early December.
So it's just it sat on her desk, is that what
That's
happened?
right. It sat on her desk and hasn't been released to the public. So we've got the most recent CFA annual report sitting there, supposedly now being released tomorrow, and it's the Premier who's misleading Victorians. But then the second instance, as you said, with the black and white in the most recent annual report that's available, the 2023-24, showing that year on year we have seen a decrease in funding to the CFA. It's so disappointing to hear from the Premier that we're misleading CFA volunteers who are putting their lives at risk, protecting their communities, and saying to them that there has been an increase in funding when in black and white it simply shows there has not been.
I'm surprised, given that the fire levy was such a political issue for the government this year, that they wouldn't have their house in order going into what usually is in Victoria a tough fire period. Now, I know you've been out in the fire ground, you've been talking to people. As I said, this is a state that lost, 173 people, Victorians, in Black Saturday, some 75 in Ash Wednesday before that. And no one's had the losses like Victoria has. So governments are culpable if these organisations don't get the breathing gear, the trucks, the support they need on the ground. That's what the volunteers need to have to save lives and protect their own lives. What are they telling you?
Well, you're right. I've been out right across the state. I've been to Harcourt, I've been to Longwood, to Yark, up to Wodonga, right across the state where we've seen these devastating fires. And to your point, this devastating loss of property, of course, that loss of life. And what I'm hearing, particularly from our CFA volunteers, is they don't feel supported. They're really concerned about the ageing fleet of their trucks in particular, going out in absolutely horrific conditions on the back of trucks where they're not protected. And this is a result of, once again, the Labor government mismanaging the finances. After a decade of them being in government, we've seen the interest bill soar to over $1 million every single hour. And these are the consequences, Peter, the real world consequences of not seeing the government, the Labor government, investing in our frontline services.
Just quickly, you're now in the election year, it's 2026, you front the voters in November. 10 days ago you lost your deputy, Sam Groth. He's not going to return to the parliament after the next election. Are you ready? Convince Victorians you're ready?
Well, we're ready and we're really excited. I've been working right throughout the summer. I've been on the ground listening to Victorians, and what I hear very clearly is that they are desperate to see a change of direction in this state. They know that Victoria is headed in the wrong direction and they want hope restored again. They want to know that someone will actually invest in the essential services they need. And that's my guarantee to them, is I will stop the waste, I will repair the budget and make sure that every Victorian gets access to the services they need and deserve. It's going to be a big year. I'm ready, my team is ready, and we're really excited for the 10 months ahead.
Well, you certainly didn't take a break. I watched very closely over the summer, so good on you, Jess. Thank you.